Every family has rules. Some are simple, like don't leave your wet towel on the floor, or no TV until your homework is done. But in my family, there was one more rule, absolute, unspoken, and enforced with terrifying certainty. Never go into mom and dad's bedroom. It wasn't just a polite knock first kind of rule. The door was always locked. I wasn't allowed inside for any reason. Not to ask a question, not to grab a toy that rolled under the door, nothing. Their room was a fortress, and I was the intruder who had to stay out. But even as a kid, I knew why I wanted to get in. It was the knocking. It wasn't constant. It came and went, soft and rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. You could only hear it if you were standing right outside their door. At first, I thought it was the pipes. But no, it was too steady, too deliberate. Like every curious child, I tried sneaking in when the door was left unlocked by mistake. The carpet swallowed my footsteps as I stepped inside. It always felt dim, curtains drawn, the air heavy with my mom's lavender perfume and my dad's cedar aftershave. Just a normal bedroom, really, a large bed, a dresser, and a tall, imposing wardrobe pushed against the far wall. But near that wardrobe, the sound grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. It was coming from behind the wall, and every single time, I got caught. My mom would appear in the doorway as if she had some sixth sense. The look on her face wasn't just anger. It was raw, unshakable fear. Punishments were swift and merciless. No TV, no friends, grounded for weeks. My dad didn't yell. His voice was quiet, low, and sharper than any scream. There are places in this house that belong to us, and us alone. If you can't learn to respect that, then you'll grow up respecting nothing at all. By the time I was a teenager, the rule had become a part of the air in our house, present, invisible, suffocating. I tried to let it go. I tried to be ordinary, school, friends, late-night snacks, earbuds in. But the knocking had a way of threading itself through the quietest moments. It would show up when I passed the hallway for no reason, like a heartbeat I wasn't supposed to hear. One night at dinner, I decided to puncture the silence. I set my fork down and asked as calmly as I could, "Why can't I go in your room? And what's the knocking?" The room shrank. My mom's hand froze around her knife until her knuckles blanched. My dad looked up slowly, his eyes like shuttered windows. The clink of silverware stopped. The clock on the wall seemed far too loud. "There is no knocking," he said, voice low, dangerously controlled. "We will not discuss this again. If you bring it up, or if you enter that room, the consequences will be beyond what you can imagine. Do you understand?" I nodded. I ate the rest of my food in small, tasteless bites. Later, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while the house settled around me. The sound came again, faint and patient. Thump, 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 as if the wall itself was practicing the shape of a word. After that night, my mother changed in small, precise ways. She loved me, I think, but from a distance. She moved through the house like a ghost with keys, disappearing into that locked room for hours. Sometimes I pressed my ear to the door and heard only her breath, and once, barely, her whisper, like she was answering someone who had never learned to speak back. I promised myself I would forget it. I promised myself I wouldn't become the kind of person who chases shadows. All it did was make the shadows follow me closer. By 21, I'd scraped together enough for a tiny apartment across town. My dad shook my hand like a man finishing a long, difficult job. My mom hugged me twice as if measuring how much of me would be left when I walked out the door. Before I go, I asked my father, one last time, "Just tell me what's in the room." His expression hardened immediately. The proud father vanished, and the warden remained. "Your new life starts when you leave this house. What's here belongs to your old one. Leave it behind." That should have been the end, but it only sharpened the edge of my resolve. I slept restlessly, half dreaming of soft steps and heavy curtains, of cedar and lavender folded together like a secret. The next morning, I watched from my window as their cars rolled down the street in quiet procession. The silence that followed was new, elastic. It stretched in every direction. I went to the kitchen and reached into the ceramic pig-shaped cookie jar, our decoy for spare keys, a childhood joke. Cold brass met my fingers. At their door, the key slid into the lock with a small, practiced sigh. I turned it and pushed. The room breathed out to meet me. Dim light, thick carpet, the scent of my mother and father braided into the air. The wardrobe stood like a sentry against the far wall. I waited, listening. The house listened back. Thump, thump, thump. I crossed the room and knelt beside the wardrobe. The sound was clearer now, near the wall that shared space with the old linen closet. I pressed my ear to the plaster, felt the coolness on my skin, and did the foolish, human thing. "Hello," I whispered. "Is someone there?" The knocking stopped. The silence that replaced it arrived like pressure in my ears. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined everything, that I was a child again, inventing mysteries to fill the blank places. Then a voice came through, not loud, more like a dry leaf dragged over stone. A girl's voice, worn down to threads. "Kay ill and I lurched back, blood roaring in my ears. I stared at the wall until my eyes burned. "No," I said to no one. "No." But the voice returned, thinner and more desperate, pleading from some place I could not see. "Kill me, please." Something inside me made a decision and didn't ask for permission. The wardrobe was heavier than it looked, old wood and older intent. It screeched across the floorboards as I dragged it inch by inch, my muscles trembling, sweat stinging my eyes. Behind it, the wall ended before it should have. In its place, a small, painted door with a simple brass knob. No keyhole. My hand didn't feel like mine when it closed around the metal. The door opened with a sound like a long-held breath finally released. The space beyond was barely larger than a closet. It smelled like dust and old candle wax. On a single hook hung tiny dresses, faded to the color of remembered pastels. A mobile with paper animals turned in non-existent wind. On a narrow shelf, photo albums labeled in my mother's neat hand. Our angel. I opened one. My parents stared back at me, younger, brighter, lit from within by the kind of happiness I'd never seen on their faces. In their arms, a baby with wisps of dark hair and my father's eyes. Page after page of small moments. Baths, blankets, yawns that looked like prayers. In the center of the floor, a little table draped with lace, an altar built out of refusal. Candles crowded around it, some tall and new, some melted to pale, waxy ruins. On a silk pillow lay something that didn't let the mind settle. It had been a baby. Now it was a shape that time had dried and sharpened. Skin turned to parchment, face collapsed into a tiny black O, eyelids sealed like thin coins. It was wrong to look at and impossible to look away from. A pull rose in me, gravity made of grief. I reached out and touched the cool, brittle forehead with 2 fingers. The room vanished. Light slammed white, like hospital walls. A doctor's voice, careful and useless. "I'm so sorry." There was nothing more we could do. My mother folded into my father as if she could disappear inside him. Then, night, here, this room. Chalk lines on the floor. My father's mouth moving around sounds that made my teeth ache. My mother's hands cupping the still weight of her child as the candles fluttered and died. A twitch, the smallest one. A door opening in the wrong direction. I felt her then. Not as a memory, more like a presence laid over mine. She had been pulled back and pinned into a body that would never grow, never move, never speak. A mind learning to be conscious inside a locked box of flesh. Time visited her as a drip and a drum. Darkness, the smell of wax, a mother's whisper, a father's vow, the slow tap of a knuckle on the hidden wall. Thump, thump, thump. Her scream didn't travel through air. It went straight through me, clean as a blade. "Please, kill me." My fingers tore away as if from flame. I stumbled, knocking a candle that never fell. My parents weren't monsters. Not the way I'd feared. They were drowning people who dragged the water into our house and taught it to stay. I stood in the doorway a long time, trying to breathe evenly. The girl's presence, my sister's, though I had never known to name her that, hovered like heat on the road. She was waiting, braced for disappointment. "I'm sorry," I said to the empty air. "I am so sorry." There was only one thing left that resembled love. I found a soft blanket at the foot of my parents' bed and carried it back to the hidden room. My hands shook, but when I lifted her, she weighed almost nothing, like a secret that had finally thinned itself into almost air. I wrapped her carefully and placed her in my duffel bag, on top of my clothes, as if I could buffer this final journey with ordinary life. I didn't hide what I'd done. I left the small door ajar and the wardrobe askew, the shape of the absence loud as a shout. I set the bedroom key on the kitchen table where my parents would see it first. Then I walked out the front door and didn't look back because I couldn't afford to. I drove until the city unwound, until fields replaced storefronts and sky replaced roofs. Her gratitude pressed against my ribs, light and unbearable, but it braided with pain that wasn't mine. Every mile felt like a prayer spoken with a mouth that didn't believe in prayer. I found an abandoned scrapyard, a graveyard of machines and intentions. There, between rusted ribs of old cars, I built a small pyre. I unwrapped her gently and set her on the wood. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I spoke to her like a brother who had always existed. I'm sorry for the years, for the dark, for the knocking, for the love that trapped you. I'm sorry I didn't know your name. I poured lighter fluid until the wood breathed cold. The match flared, bright as a tiny sunrise, and fell. Flame is a language that doesn't stutter. It spoke fast. It spoke clean. I watched until there was nothing left to watch. The air turned sweet and sour, and ash lifted in slow spirals like thoughts finally permitted to rise. Somewhere in the heat, the pressure inside my skull eased, like a door unlocked in a house I'd lived in all my life. Her presence thinned to the edge of sensation. For a second, I felt the shape of a thank you. It was not words. It was relief, so deep it made me weak. When the fire sank to embers, I stayed. I understood what waited for me if I ever drove back down that quiet street. The bedroom door ajar, the wardrobe shoved aside, the altar yawning open like a pulled tooth. My parents standing in the doorway of a future I had torn in half. They would hate me. They would be right, in their way. I had done the kindest thing I could imagine, and in doing it, I had broken the only family I had. Mercy is messy at close range. It doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like loss that chose a better shape. When I finally turned away, the horizon was a long, low bruise. I didn't have a plan beyond not going home. I had a duffel bag that smelled like smoke and a life that began with a promise I hadn't meant to make. I would leave all of it behind. But houses remember, and so do people. The first night in my new apartment, I woke to the old habit of listening for sounds in the dark. The room was empty and clean. The only heartbeat was mine. Still, in the briefest pause between breaths, I thought I heard it. One soft echo, not from a wall but from the space just behind my ribs. Thump. Not a plea. Not a prison. Just a goodbye.